know, one of the things I'm going to talk about today is about how there is a struggle afoot to explain the Tea Party. And you got people all over the place. In fact, I was asked by the Salina Journal earlier this afternoon about kind of the origins of the Tea Party. And there's this understanding, at least in the popular press, that somewhere somebody had to have funded this thing, or, you know, there's got to be some sort of political machine behind it. But I got to tell you, in my race, and I can only talk from my own, the people on the ground in Alaska had never been involved in politics before. It was a grassroots movement that was a result of the outrage over where the federal government is headed. And I know that you guys share that outrage, or you wouldn't be here today. Now, I was going to get a little bit into who is the Tea Party, but we already had a fantastic rendition of that. It's everybody. It's you, it's me, but typically it's a person that really never has been involved. And I will tell you, it's somebody that has no quid pro quo whatsoever. There is nothing going in my hand for changing and restoring liberty in this country. The only thing that's coming back to us is a future for our children. And I got to tell you, why are we awakened to what's going on in this country? Well, I can tell you in Alaska, it's when I wake up in the morning and I find out I can't burn wood in my stove because the EPA has put some ludicrous regulation in place that says the federal government says you can't burn smoke. And I see we got a couple of other Alaskans here with us. I mean, you can feel for that too. I appreciate you coming out. Thank you. But the federal government is out of control. And when we talk about what the Tea Party is going to do, we're talking about a complete change in our approach to D.C. This is not some sort of, let's kind of reverse the growth of government movement. This is a fundamental reorientation. We've seen that D.C. is broken. It is, in every respect. I mean, I don't care what you point to. What federal program out there can you point to and say, hey, that's a lot of success? I mean, I would tell you that I think the best thing that our country can do is get back to the founders' vision, which is increased control here at home. That means government close at hand, local, state officials. Where you've got oversight, where you can say, hey, look, there's a problem with this program, Representative. I want you to fix it. You can march down the hall and say, hey, this is something that needs to be addressed, or I don't like that relationship you have with Lobbyist A. In D.C., that's pretty darn difficult to do. But if you like the entitlement state, then move to Massachusetts and create it. But then also, you get to take the debt created by that and put that on your shoulders. Don't ask the federal government to bail you out. Now, the mainstream media, they want to tell you it's all over. You know, hey, look at all those races that were lost in 2010. It's just a flash in the pan. You know, we heard about Schumer. Well, you know, the other comment he made was that we're like fleas. I kid you not. Of course, the extremist was the talking points that the Democrats and their supporters have suggested. But there's a lot of bad statements out there. You got Harry Reid, you got Pelosi with her AstroTurf comment. But why are they reacting this way? Because they fear us. Why do they fear us? Well, because, first of all, like I mentioned before, this is not an organized movement. This is grassroots from the ground, okay? This is not some multi-billionaire controlling us like George Soros. This is people that are outraged. These are people that are outraged that want to save this country for their children and their children's children. And when you're dealing with a movement that you can't control, because at the base of it is liberty and the Constitution, that strikes fear in the hearts of those that have their hand in the bucket. Right. But the left doesn't like us, and neither does the media to a large extent. And so they come up with these crackpot polls. I saw one on CNN the other day, suggested we were a minority. That, you know, it was just a very few people, flash in the pan type thing, they're going to go away. In fact, that's kind of Harry Reid's view, that, you know, eventually the economy is going to get good. I guess nobody heard about the downgrade today. How many heard about what Moody's did today? First time in American history, our debt, even though the debt bond rating has not been reduced, our outlook has been reduced from stable to negative. First time in American history. Now, when that bond rating goes down, the cost of our debt goes up. That's inflationary. And you think you're going to be able to keep this house of cards standing? this dependency entitlement state standing? No, it's going to come down. And that's why we've got to be in place, not just to catch it, but hopefully to change it before that collapse comes. And that means we can't be discouraged. That means these little minor setbacks where the establishment and the left, all sides, I'm talking left and right, attacks the Tea Party, you got to pick back up and say never in American history has such a movement arisen at such a time, except for maybe turning back the clock 200 years. This is an extraordinary time, an extraordinary opportunity to turn back this nation, to restore liberty, and to get us back on track. But you know, the left knows it. The Huffington Post the other day wrote this was last week. And listen to what I'm saying here. Once again, the unpopular views of a minority have been imposed on the majority. This was said in respect to the budget deal that passed through the $38 billion cut. Then they follow on a few sentences later in the same article. But progressives in this country should be asking themselves a serious question. Why does the Tea Party seem to be so more effective than the left as a movement? Huh? Well, obviously they're afraid of us, but they also know that we are effective. Despite the fact that we've had setbacks, the fact of the matter remains that our numbers are growing, and they're only going to get greater as our country continues to confront problems. Now, what are those problems? Well, the problems are pretty deep set. Now, I was encouraged the debate has been changed in D.C. Thank you, Representative. I think the fact of the matter is that people are finally getting their heads screwed on straight to a certain degree. But I'm going to say some things that are going to be offensive probably to some. $38 billion. CBO said it's $352 million as of September 30th. We are screaming to the edge of the cliff at 90 miles per hour. We might have slowed the car by about 1 mile per hour. The terms of the debate have been changed, but if we continue at this pace, we're done. We can't continue to depend upon the foreign entities that are upholding our debt level. You know, you've already got the Chinese, the Russians, the Indians, you know, those emerging economies, even some of the more advanced economies saying, we aren't going to continue to buy your debt. We don't depend, we don't believe that you're going to be able to pay it back. Or they may be concerned that we're deflating the value of that debt because we're inflating our money supply. That's what quantitative easing is. We're basically printing money. And that hurts those that hold our debt. So what happens if they stop buying our debt? If they quit propping up the entitlement state? Well, the end result of that is collapse for us. You know that if every dollar spent, over 50 cents goes to the entitlement state and servicing the debt. Over 50 cents. And of that dollar, over 40 cents is borrowed. That's an outrageous figure. Absolutely outrageous. It's one that's not sustainable. Now put on a couple of other figures. The United States used to be the leading steel producer in the early 90s. Where do we stand vis-a-vis China today? China manufactures almost 10 times more steel than we do. Our manufacturing base going overseas. Our economy services based. The extractive industries are gone. Oil and gas, we've got the capacity in this nation to produce all the hydrocarbons we need. But we've killed that sector of our economy because we've got right now somebody in the White House that I think likes doing it, to be quite honest.
He does. He does.
You know, this is the man that just said the other day that we weren't a great nation until 1965. He listed off all of our entitlements and said, hey, you know, but for those entitlements, we'd be in the bucket. We wouldn't be a great nation. Well, I got news for that president. He's bad for America, and we better change him out in 2012. Well, that's going to take some work. And it's also going to take a spirit of non-compromise, not compromise. We cannot afford another president, another 4 years, that believes in growing the federal government. And I don't care whether it's a Democrat or Republican.
That's right. That's right.
We cannot accept the argument that we'll just compromise a little bit. That's what's been going on the last 20 years, and it's killing us. That means we as a Tea Party have to send a direct and clear message. We will defeat you in the primary if you do not represent our values. Now, there's a lot I can talk about things that need fixed in this country, but at the base of it, it's the values of this nation that have got to get back on track. You know, we wouldn't steal from future generations if we had that good, solid Judeo-Christian value of thou shalt not steal. Fundamentally, all problems can trace their way back to that, folks. Why do we believe in something other than the rule of law? Why do we say it's okay to twist and turn the Constitution and say it means something it does not, unless we've abandoned those values? The rule of law is what this nation was founded on. That is the Constitution. Fundamentally, we must get back to it. I want to read something. The sacrifice that our nation went through, and you know there's a lot of sacrifice that's gone on. How many veterans do we have here today? Raise your hand. I want to shout out and clap for those veterans serving their country. But what about the sacrifice? I'm going to read something because it put more eloquently than I can, and frankly, it's probably a little more accurate than my memory from school here at Salina Central would help me with. But the 56 signers of the Declaration, they went through a nightmare, almost every one of them. And it's that kind of sacrifice that we've got to remember in the struggle that you and I are joined in. 5 of the signers of the 56 were captured by the British as traitors and tortured before they died. 12 had their homes ransacked and burned. 2 lost their sons in the Revolutionary War. Another 2 had their sons captured. 9 of the 56 died or fought from wounds or hardship of the Revolutionary War. And what kind of men were they? Were they, you know, just common everyday men? Some of them, but most of them were highly educated. 24 were lawyers and jurists, 11 were merchants, 9 were farmers, large plantation owners, men of means, well educated. But they signed the Declaration of Independence knowing full well that the penalty would be death if they were captured. Carter Braxton of Virginia, a wealthy planter and trader, saw his ship swept from the seas by the British Navy. He sold his homes and properties to avoid debts and died in rags. Thomas McKean was so hounded by the British that he was forced to move his family almost constantly. He served in Congress without pay, and his family was kept in hiding. His possessions were taken from him, and poverty was his reward. Vandals or soldiers or both looted the properties of Ellery, Clymer, Hall, Walton, Gwinnett, Hayward, Rutledge, and Middleton. At the Battle of Yorktown, Thomas Nelson Jr. noted that the British General Cornwallis had taken over his very own home. The owner quietly urged George Washington to open fire on his own home, and it was destroyed. He later died bankrupt. Francis Lewis had his home and properties destroyed. The enemy jailed his wife, and she died within a few months. John Hart of New Jersey was driven from his wife's bedside as she lay dying. Their 13 children fled for their lives. His fields and mill were laid to waste. For more than a year, he lived in forests and caves, returning home to find his wife dead and his children vanished. A few weeks later, he died from exhaustion and a broken heart. Lewis Morris and Philip Livingston suffered similar fates. Such are the stories and sacrifices of the American Revolution. These were not wild-eyed, rabble-rousing ruffians. They were soft-spoken men of means and education. They had security, but they valued liberty more. Standing tall, straight, and unwavering, they pledged together for support of this declaration with firm reliance on the protection of the divine providence. We mutually pledged to each other our lives, our fortune, and our sacred honor. They gave you and I a free and independent America. These sacrifices cannot be made in vain. The destiny of this nation is absolutely to remain the bright, shining city on a hill. Join with me to restore liberty to the land. God bless you, God bless Salina, and God bless the USA. Thank you.